When I look at the kids, there's something I learned that they have gone through a lot of suffering from child when they were young up to this time. But still, through that suffering, these children have become so patient. And out of that, they are also able to teach us what it means to be patient.
Welcome to Unlikely Gifts, a podcast for anyone looking for hope amid difficult circumstances. Life can be beautiful, unexpected, and at times profoundly difficult. It helps to hear from others who have grown from life's challenges and joys. That's why Leonard Mbonani and Cynthia Bauer are sharing how their experiences working with families impacted by disabilities in Africa have taught them about life's most amazing gifts and its hardest tragedies. These are Unlikely Gifts.
Hello, and welcome back to Unlikely Gifts. I'm Frank Boswell, and I'm joined by Cynthia Bauer and Leonard Mbonani, the co-founders and directors of an organization called Kupenda for the Children. Kupenda is a Swahili word that means love, and the organization exists to replace harmful beliefs that surround disability with beliefs that improve lives. So Cindy and Leonard, welcome once again. I always enjoy seeing you. Well, today we wanted to talk about the idea of patience and how that plays into the kind of work that Kupenda does. Our last podcast, we talked about wisdom, and I started off with the observation that I don't think people think about and value wisdom much. But patience, I think everybody knows what it is. Nobody has it, and everybody knows it. And I could think of 100 ways our conversation might bounce today, but I thought it'd be kind of interesting. Certainly the least popular quality around. It's not an easy world for patience, and everybody wants it now, which of course doesn't happen. But I just wonder, does anything jump to mind when you think of the work that you do and the word patience? What springs to mind for you?
There's two things that come to mind for me. The first one isn't really work related necessarily, except my dad is part of the work, I guess. Without him, there would be no Kupenda. When I think of the word patience, I think of my dad and how he used to always say to me that I had a lot of patience. And the reason I had so much patience, he said, is because I never used it. It's like, you have more patience than anyone because you never use it. Very dad joke.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah. And then, when you think of patience, obviously it's the first definition of love in Corinthians. When we said love is patient is the very first one. So
That's a good observation, and I don't know that I had noticed that before. That you're thinking of that love chapter. Love is patient, love is kind. If I speak with the tongues of men and angels, most people think of it as a wedding passage, but it's not. And the very first one is patience. Why do you think that's so important and so critical? Anything jump to mind?
I think that to truly know people, to truly love people, you can't hurry things. I think that one of the things that it'll be interesting to hear more what Leonard says because I had come up with the different titles for these different segments. And patience is something I have had to learn a lot about in our work because I'm an American coming from a fast-paced culture going to Kenya, and not just Kenya, but on the coast of Kenya, where things are much, much slower. And so, as someone who wants to get things done, I've had to learn a lot about slowing down, about listening, about understanding things and learning from people instead of just trying to come in with my solutions and my fixes and that kind of thing. And I think that's for us. And I'd be curious to know for Leonard how much he's learned about patience. But for me, I know as an American coming into the culture that we work in and around the world, I mean, it's very similar in many low income countries, is taking the time and patience, I think there's different definitions for it too, right? But patience to me is like waiting, slowing things down, being aware that you need to not just push through. You need to be patient.
Yeah, for me, when I look at the word patience, I really want to connect it with my way I was brought up, the people I did interact with, particularly my mom, who went through a lot of suffering at her early marriage after losing her husband. But I could see a lot of patience in this woman who is my mom because under all those odds, she used to be so patient, not being that disappointed that very early or very quickly. And I think out of that, I borrowed a lot from her. And then when now it comes to Kwenza, as was said, or as it is defined, that patience is love, love is patience. I think as an organization, from the word go when we started this organization, there has been a lot of patience that I've observed because many times when you are starting something new, you could be having very high expectations. You could be thinking that you are going to reap the benefits of whatever you are doing that very fast, but it has not been the same. It was a lot of patience, a lot of waiting. You are very slow waiting for things to happen. And I think that is what has really helped us, both of us, as Cindy has said, yes, she was expecting maybe to have things done that very fast. It never happened because, for one, either our technical ability was just too poor. But still, I think I really gained a lot from being that patient because even at my place of work, sometimes you may have to wait a lot, for particularly to parents, like when you are talking to a parent, take your child to school, or this is not because of witchcraft. You are educating her, but it takes so much for her to understand that and even to take action. But you, as a person working with this parent, you really need to have a lot of patience. So at the end, you find that you have achieved what you intended to just because of the patience. And again, my experience, seen so many organizations that have mushroomed within Kilifi County, but because of lack of patience, many people have given up early and went to do something else. But here, I think I have learned a lot of patience, waiting, and all the time making sure that you say, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do, no matter how long it takes. But I feel this is what I am supposed to do. So that's how I look at patience from my side.
So I want to come back to that, but are people in Kenya more patient than people in America? Is that what I'm hearing you all say? Or people are people, right? And maybe they're just impatient about different things. I'm just curious.
Yeah, people are people and people differ. And I want to believe there are people who are patient in Kenya, and there are also people in the US who are also patient. So I don't want,
I think
I
he's
don't.
afraid of insulting us. I think we can say I can
Oh,
say
I
yes. I
imagine
think
we're
that
very irritating. I imagine we try people's patience. That's what I imagine about
yes.
Americans. So,
I think in
Yes.
Kenya, yeah, in Kenya, I think Americans really struggle with patience in general, obviously. And I think that for most of us who've worked in countries like Kenya, we hopefully will learn if we're willing to step aside and understand that sometimes you have to slow down. You have to understand you can't just be quick to judge, quick to make decisions. You need to listen and just wait to learn more. I think that a lot of things that can happen. And remember, I was thinking of a story just now. I don't know if I think patience maybe I mean, I just looked up like the dictionary definition, which is the capacity to accept or tolerate delay, trouble, or suffering without getting angry or upset. Um, but I think that it reminded me of a story that I heard in Kenya. And I think maybe we've all learned because I have seen this in our Kenyan staff too. I think there used to be a quick judgment of parents and how they treated children with disabilities in the cultures we work as opposed to what I think most of us have developed is more of an understanding of what parents are dealing with as well, and not to come quickly to judge. And I remember someone pointed out maybe my evolved views on it when someone was telling me this terrible story about a child who was born with a disability, and the mother put the child in a bag of nails and threw the child away into like a dumpster, the garbage. And my response after many years of doing this work was how horrible it was for that mother to feel she had to do that, because understanding the situation was desperate for her and what the community was, instead of what we used to do is say like how terrible the mother was. But we now I think through understanding, we know like the parents often are just as abused and alienated as the children with disabilities themselves, and we need to have patience with the parents too.
Yeah, I think it was yesterday when we did an experiment here. I asked one of my staff members to spend at least 4 hours in a wheelchair. And this
Oh, wow.
and this person accepted, and we could see how she was really struggling. And at the end, she said, "Oh, so it needs a lot of patience." Because when she wanted to move from one place to another, she had to wait for someone to wheel her to that direction. So all the time she said, okay, so one has to have a lot of patience, because I felt like I needed to stand from the wheelchair and just walk and pick my whatever I wanted, but here I'm restricted. So I think it is also showing us working with these children and their parents gives us an opportunity to learn about patience.
Mm.
Mm.
It's not incidental, that's sure.
Can I
Yeah.
ask why you had a person sit in a wheelchair for 4 hours yesterday? Was there a reason?
No, you see,
Time out.
one thing I've learned from my staff. Sometimes we think parents or the children are too slow. Why can't they do this work as fast as possible? Why can't the parent finish this assignment? I told him. But I said, no, it's because we do not understand, particularly the children, whatever they are going through. Let us also have a test of what it means to be in a wheelchair and see the struggles that you go through. And I'm sure by the time we asked her to get out of the wheelchair, she was able to say, hey guys, I've learned something. This place is not comfortable. And I feel like, oh, so this is what they go through. Then at least that such a person has that experience of saying, oh, I know what it means to be in a wheelchair or to have a disability. And I think this helps us to understand what our people we work with go through.
I've also learned kids in Africa, and then because of the work we do, I've been in a lot of situations with people with disabilities around the world. And one of the areas that I've had to learn a lot of patience too, in addition to cultural stuff, is we have had in some of our reports on children, it'll say the child can't talk. And I'm like, wait, I actually have spoken to that child. But the thing is, there are some disabilities that affect people's speech. And in order to have a conversation with them, you have to slow down and you have to really listen, because some people would say cerebral palsy that affects their speech. It can be hard to understand them if you don't take the time. And I asked someone once in America who had cerebral palsy, and his speech was hard to understand for me because I wasn't used to it. I said, is it annoying to you when I ask you to repeat yourself? He said, no, it's annoying when people pretend they understand me and don't ask for clarification. And that to me was because a lot of people, they just want to keep moving on. And so they just nod and say yes. And so I knew like this guy who also had speech challenges with cerebral palsy. He used to just start saying crazy things like aliens abducted me. And the person listening would be like, oh, that's so nice. So that he knew they didn't understand anything he was saying. But you have to really, it can be challenging to take the time. But when you do, you get to
Yeah.
know the people. And I think that's the thing. Like, if you take the time, you get to know some really interesting people, but most people just pass by because they get too frustrated.
Yeah, and I think I'm also still learning a lot about the patients now that we brought two young men with disabilities in our in our office. This is George and Kahindi. You can imagine when George is speaking, you don't need to make him you need to give him time. Otherwise, you will end up giving some answers for him, yet he was just to take his time and give the answer. So it is teaching us that we need to give him time to come up and give the answer. Again, with the Kahinde on the at the road, at the gate, he's not only teaching us as a staff on patience, but he's also teaching even the community on how to be patient. Because when they come there, they have to at least learn how to communicate with him, even if it's the basic word to greet or to say, can I come in? And I think this is how we are also learning patience, and the community is also learning about patience.
Well, I was going to ask, what helps you learn about patients? So I heard sitting in a wheelchair for 4 hours and actually getting to know them. I think I heard that, listening to their stories. Are there other things that have helped you develop patience?
I mean, I think it's also patience as priorities, right? I think one time, a long time ago, in the early stages of the development of the organization, I was still just pushing, pushing, pushing. And I remember that they asked me to come to tea at the school, at one of the first schools that we supported. And they were surprised that I said yes, because I'm like, okay, this is something I need to do, even though we had so many things to do that in my mind were more important. But when I showed up for tea, they had actually gathered like 30 people. And their whole point of the tea was to actually give lots of affirmation to me, which was really just um something I didn't realize I needed at the time. And I think that's what we often do is we don't take the time to just be with people and relationship build and take the time instead of when you know you have like a giant to-do list. And as Leonard knows, I'm obsessed with my to-do lists and our strategic plans and all that stuff. But to understand, like at the end of the day, the relationships with people are so important. And that just means you have to take time out. And I think another thing I think about with some of the things we've learned a lot from the kids. I think with every subject we've talked about in these segments, it's what we've learned from the kids. Like we have kids that deal with chronic pain. We have kids that deal with abuse and neglect. And yet still at the end of the day, they have this way when over time that they can show us joy too, even though they've experienced all these things. And so the question is, if they can do that, why can't we? And from what I understand, that's also a part of patience is to actually allow things to be so like things aren't going to get all resolved in one day, but you can still have joy in the journey if you're just patient to understand that things aren't all going to get resolved. And I remember thinking about that. I brought up my niece many times, who also taught some of like Leonard's daughter Mahenzo, who has dealt with some chronic issues. She said she learned so much from my niece because even though she had cancer, she still had a way of celebrating everything. And even though she had pain, she'd be dancing in her hospital room. And I think that Mahenzo had said to me, like, because if she can do that, if these other kids can do that, I can do it too. Like she said, if it wasn't for the kids, she's like, I would just lay in bed all day. But because I've seen what they can do, they're long suffering and still having joy, why can't the rest of us?
So you set out to minister to these kids, but what you're describing is the kids are ministering to you. You're
Exactly.
learning things from them that you wouldn't learn otherwise. Are the kids more naturally patient? Are they forced to become patient? Or are they all different in how they respond to their circumstances?
For me, when I look at the kids, there's something I learned that has also taught them to be patient. And this is in connection to the suffering they have gone through. They have gone through a lot of suffering from child when they were young up to this time. But still, through that suffering, these children have become so patient. They are able to tolerate. And out of that, they are also able to teach us what it means to be patient. So I think it's two-way. They have taught us how to be patient out of their suffering. But one thing I really want to say from the word go is between me and and Cindy. I think we have taught each other a lot of patience. She could say she has learned patience from our side, but I also want to believe that I have also learned how to be patient on her from her side. For example, when she did mention about uh, the strategic plan, which can really, really be stressful, but you have to be there. Maybe as from two to almost six, sometimes even seven. And I think all that needs for one to be patient enough. Because again, you are not just doing it for fun, but you are doing it for the benefit of that child. So through our interaction, I think we have also learned patience from one another.
Yeah, I did learn recently that Leonard does not enjoy sitting for a whole day in a meeting for sure. I think I realize they start to fade soon. Because I think most people are that way. I realized that yeah, that's one of those things that I don't think I realized was more unique to me that I could just focus for a long time. But I don't
So we're
know
patient and impatient about different kinds of things, it sounds like.
that's very true too. Yeah.
Well, I just know that in North American culture, it's all about getting things done. It's productivity, it's efficiency, it's things. And the
Mhm.
people, we just lose sight of people all over the place. And you're in people work. There's nothing fast about working with people. I was asked about church ministry years ago when I was starting a church and I didn't have anybody, and it was going great. No people, no problems. That was my motto. And as
Mhm.
soon as you get people, you just have a lot of problems to deal with. And people don't change quickly. At least other people don't. And then you realize,
Well,
well, I'm not changing very fast either. So,
yeah, that's well, and I think it'd be interesting to compare who we were like 20 something years ago versus who we are
oh,
now. Because I think a lot of times there'll be an issue, just working, and we step back, and I'm usually like, I think there's a miscommunication. I think people are jumping to conclusions, and we're always learning about one another's cultures too and just stepping back. And I've heard Leonard say that about a staff member. I was really pushing for, he's like, I just understand that's how that person is, and I'm gonna like deal with that and understand getting to know who people are. But I was thinking about patients too, in terms of I had a conversation with someone the other day and thinking about this a lot in relationship to the subjects we talked about before about healing. We were talking about healing and disability. And one of the things I was thinking about, like, okay, let's say, like, there are some people who are really excited about the idea of someone getting all of a sudden they're not in a wheelchair anymore. They get up and walk out of a wheelchair and it's a miracle. And I'm like, okay, and I'm not saying those things don't happen, but I'm saying if was what happened, or even let's just say I sprouted a hand, a miraculous hand when I was younger, I feel like it would be a one-off be like immediate gratification. And then I don't know what my life would have been afterwards. But the work we're doing is slow. We're slowly changing communities. God is working through us and with the people that we work in to transform entire communities that's once neglected, abused, and even murdered children with disabilities to now be inclusive communities where children are not only going to school and learning, they're growing up to start their own families, to be leaders in their churches and their communities and teachers. To me, that's a bigger miracle than if someone got up out of a wheelchair and walked away.
that is such a great observation. I
But it
mean,
takes patience to do that.
miracles happen, but I mean, only God knows whether it's wise to heal this person or not, because so much is learned through suffering. The Bible talks about that all the time. And
But who's to say that that's not a miracle? It's just a slower one. It just takes
well,
more
C.S.
time.
Lewis used to say that Jesus' miracles were speeded up natural processes, turning water
Hmm.
into wine. He says that happens all the time. It just doesn't happen that quickly.
Mhm.
So, well, that's so
Yeah,
interesting.
maybe what I had forgotten is about how patience was in me during the time we are starting the organization. There was a lot of discouragement in fighting, particularly from the education office, because they felt like, oh, you are taking over their responsibility. This is their work. And all the time, they will always fight the organization in one way or the other. But I want to believe that it is out of that patience, whatever they said, whatever they thought about the organization, we still say, no, let's remain patient. And one day they'll come and realize why we are pushing for whatever we are doing today. And today, I can see now today, those people who are trying to fight us as an organization are today our best friends. They are seeing the work, the good work we are doing, and they can confess that no, we have never seen such an organization that has passion for the children with disabilities apart from Kupenda Kuhenza. So I think all this is about patience. Many people will say so many things. Even today, as we work with the community, they are going to say so many things negatively about the organization. But when you look at it from all the two sides, you find that it has a lot of benefits to the community again. Then along the journey, the same community comes to say, hey, you people from Kuhenza and Kupenda, you are doing a very good job. Otherwise, you'd even have given up. I remember someone who really, I had to have a lot of patience one day when somebody said, hey, Leonard, you people are driving these beautiful cars, you are getting good salaries because of these children who are drooling. I felt like, okay, what does he really want me to do? But then I said, what I need to do is to have patience. And I had a lot of patience. Today, that same man walks to this place and says, hey guys, you're doing a good job. So we have to have a lot of patience when you are doing things, and we know that what we are doing is for the benefit of the child and the entire community.
You got to be patient with each other. You got to be patient with the children that you're working with and the community. And then you've got critics, people giving everywhere you turn, you're running into challenges. That's a lot of layers to this.
Yeah.
Well, and I think a lot of our kids, and myself too, people with disabilities, we've had to learn not to just be reactionary when people say stupid things to us. So there are things, there's my internal dialogue and there's what I actually say. Because instead
Oh,
of getting, I'm like, well, and there's been a couple times when I have been in a hurry and frustrated in a bad mood that I may not be the best version of myself in response to stupid questions. Um, as people with disabilities,
wow.
I don't know that people understand how often random strangers will just ask you what's wrong with you. Like say people I don't know, just someone randomly at a rest area will say what happened to your arm, as if it's their right to know, right? And so I was at a restaurant not that long ago, and someone asked me in front of a couple friends of mine. She said, "Were you a formaldehyde baby? Is that it? The thing that a lot of people were taking for like morning sickness that caused a lot of people to be born without limbs."
Oh,
And she's like, "Well, you're
thalidomide.
not." Yeah, yeah. And I said, "Well." She's like, you don't seem like you're old enough. I'm like, that's true. I'm not old enough. And thank you for recognizing that. No, that's not what happened. It's how I
Bless
was
you.
born, and we don't know. And it was a very drunk person too. But it's like you have to, and I think a lot of our kids and myself, like that's one thing that binds us is we've had to live in a world where people see us as other and are asking us questions that really are not okay and trying to see it as an educational moment instead. I had a woman not too long ago say to me, like, she just randomly asked me how I tied my shoes and how I zipped my pants. And I was like, first of all, I was wearing a skirt and boots. So who knows that I could do those things, right? But I stopped and I wanted to be angry, but I said, I explained how I tie my shoes and I said, I can do all these things. But I think that we've had to learn because I think in this world, unfortunately, people expect us to be patient, because there's a stereotype of the angry disabled person too. Someone asked us in Kenya once, why are people with disabilities so angry? I was like, well, I don't like that question very much. But one of our
It makes
Kenyan
me angry.
people, yeah, it makes me angry you asked the question. But one of my it was Terazia, one of our first Kenyan students who had lost her leg. She's like, we're angry because you people judge us constantly and we're always having to prove ourselves. That's why we're angry. And like someone had said to Terazia, oh, look at how well you cook or something. And she's missing a leg. And she's like, how does that affect my hands? I've had people comment on my soccer playing and how good that was. I'm like, what, like as if that was amazing to be able to be a good soccer player without a hand. And I'm like, impressed with my guitar playing, but not my soccer playing. But I think that over time, I've had to learn myself with the kids. I think we all like, it's an opportunity to share with people. It's an educational opportunity to help them understand that, understand things and maybe try in some way to help them understand that it's not really appropriate to just be asking strangers things that are kind of personal. But in my head, I will say my impatient side, my frustrated side, I kind of always want to ask, like when they say, what happened to your arm? I want to say, like, what happened to your face? Like, those are the kinds of things inside. like, like, you wouldn't ask someone, like, why are you fat? Why are you ugly? Like, why are you in a wheelchair seems acceptable, which isn't. Like people don't, if you get to know the person and take time to know the person, then those questions can come. But it shouldn't be like you're an assumption that you can do that.
It just sort
And
of
I think,
objectifies you.
yeah, and I think that's something that we've learned to share with people in our workshops and our trainings to help people again just understand like we can't just assume things about people and every person's different too. And I think that the work that we do is long and slow, but at the end of it,
Mm.
it's long lasting. And I think that's the whole organization and the work that we do takes a long time. And I think that without patience, we would not be where we are because the thing that would be easier is to just go distribute a bunch of equipment and medications and start schools and all that stuff and not
Yeah.
care about changing anything in the community. It would just be completely dependent on outside sources and never change the hardest part and the most important part of what's going on is the belief system, and beliefs take a long time to change.
For sure. And that's the part that needs a lot of patience because you can easily get frustrated. Here you have trained a pastor for so many hours, and then you realize that he has not changed. You feel like, oh, what have I been doing all this time? But when you have that patience, you know that stigma will take time to change. So you just push on talking to him, maybe calling him even for another session of teaching. And that calls for patience. But at the end, you find this person now has changed in terms of the way he was perceiving people with disabilities.
One of the things that just jumping out at me is when I was looking up some verses in the Bible on patience, um, I was just struck by how many of them were paired with the idea of bearing with one another, putting up with one another. I mean, the assumption is that somebody's being really annoying. And I know C.S. Lewis says that everybody feels benevolent as long as no one is annoying them at the moment. But the
Mm.
truth is, in this world, there's always annoying people and things you have to put up with. One of the places says, bearing with one another in love, be patient, bearing with one another. So that doesn't sound easy. I mean, I discovered there are four Greek words for patience. We just have one word in English. But one of the words in Greek has to do with suffering mistreatment. Another one has to do with tolerating shortcomings. That's kind of different, you know. Nobody's actively persecuting me, but they're driving too slow or they're always late for meetings or whatever it is. Another one has to do with persevering through adversity, pressing through. That's sort of in relation to my circumstances. I don't know if those generate any additional thoughts for you. I just wonder what are the most trying things that you deal with, or pet peeves even.
I share my stories only for people to think about it from like because I think too, I mean, a lot of our work is also making sure the voices of people with disabilities are heard. So any work we do, we always ensure that people with disabilities are sharing because a lot of people haven't heard them speak or those people haven't felt like they could speak. And
Well,
so we always want to lift them up to make sure that they're and give opportunities. I shouldn't say lift them up because that sounds like a charity thing. But we want to always make sure that when we have a chance that we're making sure voices are heard of people with disabilities. So people, because people think of disability as like an issue as opposed to like a person. There's a
Hmm.
person with disabilities, and if you were that person, how would you feel? That's how anyone else would feel. We actually find ourselves having to say people with disabilities have the same desires, the same emotions, the same wants as anybody. And somehow I think that that is somehow profound to some people to learn that.
Well, just listening to that was a very vivid illustration of what you do. I just thought that came through so vividly. Pet peeves, other annoyances, other challenges.
Yeah, I think for me, what sometimes really annoys me is when like we have planned something with my team or my staff here, and then I realized that what we had agreed on was not done the right way. I feel frustrated because I feel like, oh, why should it not have been done the right way? But again, when patience comes in, you don't get angry, you just look for a way to address the issue and then you continue because you still understand we are all brought up differently, but that is what makes us a team. So, yeah, tolerance is also coming in when you are working with a team.
Well, and I
Yeah.
think that we've learned so much from the kids, but also we've learned about being leaders too. And I think that in this work, we've had to lead people, and as we grow, we've brought in more people and more staff, which means we have to accept. I think that's for me one of the things I've had to learn for patients. People aren't going to do it exactly my way. No one will ever do it exactly the way I think it should be done, and I have to be okay with that because it's better to get it done in a good way than in the way I think is the excellent way. And whenever instead of getting upset with staff, which I'm sure we all do, to step back and say, okay, what can I do to help you improve in this area? And ultimately it's for the betterment of the kids because it is easier just to do things yourself sometimes, but then Leonard and I have no time because we're doing everything ourselves. The patient thing to do is to step back and say, how can I help our staff members improve to do this better? Not to just take it and do it ourselves, which I think that is a reflection of lack of patience, is just to say, well, I can just do it.
Yeah, it takes time, but as you have said, that's the right way to go because if you are going to take all the activities and do them, then you are going to be really stressed up. And yet, you brought these people to be able to support you. So the only thing is to empower them, guide them where you feel like they are not doing the right things. And at the end, they will also master what you wanted them to do. And that is how you also get a lot of relief from doing everything. And after all, you brought them because you could not do everything on your own. So you need their presence, you need their input.
We hired someone recently in this last year, and I kept hesitating to go through with the hire, mostly because I'm like, this is going to take me time because I have to step aside to really build into the new staff members so that that person eventually will be able to help. But in order for them to truly be able to be helpful, I have to take the time to build into them. And it's hard. That's that whole idea of like taking the time, patience, suffering, like going through the mistakes, letting them make mistakes, because it's kind of like when we have kids that are learning to walk. You just want them to get up and walk, right? But that's not going to happen right away. You've got to actually take the time and you've got to let them fall too. And I
Yeah.
think that's the thing that's hard to see. Like I love that we have things with kids that are learning to walk who are with the physical therapist, they have something tied around their waist and it doesn't support them. It's just as if they fall, it keeps them from falling on their face so they don't get hurt. But they're actually learning to walk. And again, it just takes, I watch the physical therapists and what they do. They have to have so much patience to just watch those kids like struggling. But some of our kids, the success is that they're sitting up, not
Oh,
just
yeah.
walking away. And I think that just seeing even the small milestones as successes is a big deal.
Well, all those other things that we want, joy and peace and um, love, none of those are possible without patience. It really is fundamental to everything else in this world. You can't get through this world without it. So I think this has been a really fascinating listening to you talk about the dimensions of this. And it makes me want to go out right now and become a very patient person just listening to you. So I want to thank you for that. And just say that we need to bring this to a close. And to our listeners, we hope that you found this episode of An Unlikely Gift to be a source of hope as you walk through life's challenges and joys. If you'd like to be a part of the meaningful work that Kupenda is doing, visit the website at www.kupenda.org. Kupenda is Kupenda.org. You'll be glad you did. Thank you for listening, and we hope you'll join us next week as we explore the topic of community.